मैंने अपनी पूरी लाइफ इसको डिवोट कर दिया है।
These are people who pretty much have a front row seat to the apocalypse, right? It's like they literally have birds falling off the sky and coming into their basement every single day.
Hi, beautiful people. This is Silas from AsianCultureVulture.com. It's great you could join me. How are you doing? Me talking to Shaunak Sen, the director of All That Breathes. This is a documentary which won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance when it had its world premiere, and we covered it on the website. It then went to Cannes and won another award, the Loyal, and now it's at London Film Festival, and we're going to be talking to Shaunak Sen about his documentary, which is actually set in Delhi. Let's go and meet him. Shaunak, welcome to AsianCultureVulture.com. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm well. So, Shaunak, tell me, please. There are kind of three elements to this film. I heard you talk about in the Q&A. There's the birds, the sky, and the family. And which came first for you?
Right. So I think how the film began was even much before I actually met the protagonists, met the Kite brothers. I think usually what happens is that the film is like this ineffable, evanescent glow at the back of your mind. You know, it's like you have a sense of the visual textures and a feeling of the film that first comes to you. And for me, it was like I've grown up in Delhi, and especially in the recent years, living there means living in this kind of gray, monotone, hazy skies, and this sense that you're, of course, constantly breathing in noxious air. This kind of a thing that the world itself or the atmosphere around you has become hostile to your sense of well-being. And the sense of, like, you know, the air conditioners of spaceship Earth going awry is very strong. And the classic sort of dystopic picture postcard of the city is you look up and you see these tiny dots gliding in the sky, and those are these black kites. So I wanted something very vaguely about the sky, the air, and these birds that are increasingly falling off the sky. It's that, like, literally apocalyptic, you know. So we were, my producing partner Aman and I were basically looking for people who have a deep and profound relationship with birds and the sky. And then we chanced upon the remarkable work of the Kite brothers. And once you go there and you realize the kind of, it's an absurdly surreal world where it's a tiny derelict basement, which has a lot of heavy industrial metal cutting work happening on one side. And on this other side are these magisterial yet vulnerable birds that are being repaired.
For me, and I think a lot of what it's really about the birds and the family, and not maybe so much about the environment. Maybe you started in one place and ended up in another. I don't know.
I think when the film began, we were all certain of the number of things that we did not want to do. So I was absolutely sure that I didn't want to make a hard-nosed, straightforward film about pollution or the environment or climate change, because I mean, at this point, those films are there dime a dozen. I don't mean to be patronizing, but there is a lot of that kind of work that is happening.
Yeah.
And that gets slotted very easily by the viewing public, and you immediately know that this is the kind of film. We were also sure that we did not want to make a nature doc or a traditional kind of a conventional nature doc or a wildlife documentary. So also we didn't have the skill set for it. And we were sure that we didn't want to, you know, use tele lenses to shoot a black kite in the sky and just see its eye with great clarity. That's not a kind of grammar that we were going for.
Sure.
The idea was to try and make a film that had these kinds of disparate layers, you know, something which had a emotional anchor with the family that was doing this remarkable work, and the atmosphere and the ecological was this broader sort of bubble, the kind of macrocosmic bubble that leaks in every now and then. There's also the social or the political that every now and then sort of bleeds in. So the idea was to have these different kind of layers stitched together that sort of bleed into the inner sanctum of the family and the work that they do. So to try and stitch together the grime of the ground and the grime of the sky, and by grime I mean ecological, social, and all these differences. So no, I didn't want to right at the onset make a quote unquote traditional, more conventional climate change or pollution.
Yeah, I think that's clear. How were the family when you first approached them? Was there much of a process of getting to know them, or how did that work in the beginning?
The brothers are actually were already fairly media savvy when I met them.
क्या है इसको? उंगली क्यों दिखा रही है मुझे तू? मेरे ऊपर एहसान कर रही है क्या?
But they're also phenomenally generous people. So, and the thing that I was most interested in is that theirs isn't a kind of bleeding heart, sentimental kind of environmentalism, right? It's almost this wry, super unsentimental, put your head down and carry on, just soldier on sort of a thing. And these are people who pretty much have a front row seat to the apocalypse, right? It's like they literally have birds falling off the sky and coming into their basement every single day.
Yeah.
But it was this kind of an approach which we that I wanted to sort of like decipher and get more into, and the brothers were i- opening up as days go by, as days went by. So
And the position of the birds is they get hurt from kites, or how do they land up with the brothers? And
I think there's a whole panoply of reasons at the point. I think the density of the air of Delhi is a contributing factor. Birds often collide into buildings, get entangled into wires. There's a lot of paper kite flying, etc. All of that. So, and the numbers that we're talking about are staggering. I mean, that was what initially drew me to the story. The fact that it's almost like this kind of dystopic apocalyptic cliche, isn't it? Like where of a city which is anyway like a laboratory for what a lot of cities in the future will be. I hopefully not, but it feels like we're heading that way.
right.
Where this volume of birds are falling off the sky every day, and it's the sheer blunt force of this one sentence premise that actually sort
Right.
of like geared us on in the film.
What do you want people to take away from watching this film, if anything? It's as a filmmaker, what kind of response are you looking for, and what sort of response have you had from people who've watched it at Sundance?
I don't have a kind of capsule version of what I want people to take away, but I think it's a broader kind of texture or the perspective of the brothers in terms of how they inhabit the world and occupy life. I think that's interesting. I think this texture of thinking of the more than human, where the human is not the absolute reference point, but thinking of a kind of simultaneity of life. And the film, the idea of shooting so many instances of non-human life as it goes on in the city, as life writ large on the canvas of the city, is to kind of contemplate this idea of of climate change and all of this, not just through a human perspective, but through this broader kind of bandwidth of human and non-human life that is coexistence and simultaneous, and a city is anyway various stakes of human life jostling cheek by jowl.
Now, the film also covers other aspects, most notably the kind of protests in Delhi around, I think, the citizenship bill and all that. So, how, again, you must have made a decision not to get. It's kind of in the film, but it's not. You don't go to the protests or anything, or the family talk about whether they should go and things like that. Again, was it how hard did you need to be in keeping the focus on the birds, I guess?
Of course, it's tempting, especially because in the last 2 years, the city of Delhi went through incredible turbulence and churns, and just like the social sphere was constantly riven by these kinds of very volatile kinds of things. And when we started, I was absolutely certain that I did not want to make a sort of frontal, direct political snapshot of that's just not the film we had set out to make. However, when you train your gaze very hard at characters, you realize that there are different ways in which the social leaks in, right? And that was the form that I wanted to retain in the film as well. So they go to the balcony and they hear audio of, crowds going by or protests going by. So it's a kind of leak. It's a kind of like the way in which the world outside hemorrhages through tiny crevices into the world of your characters. So I never wanted a kind of direct frontal kind of encounter with the social unrest or the political and so on, but you see that it's there, and you see that it's constantly, so not constantly, but every now and then maintaining some kind of presence in their lives.
How do you feel about Delhi as a city and your hometown?
I think Delhi is the sort of only city that I know the vernacular and the colloquial life of this intimately. And I think that like it's likely that all my films will be set there. My first film and the previous film was basically looking at the city of Delhi through the lens of sleep and the night. So this film is about looking at the city through the sky and its birds and its birds. So in a way, it's only when you know a city. I grew up there, and it's like it's part of my vernacular, idiom of
Okay.
life.
Thank you so much, Shaunak, for joining us today, and I wish you all the best with the film, and I hope we'll get to speak again about your next project, maybe one.
Thank you. This was lovely
Great.
chatting, and
Yeah.
thanks for watching and
Thank
talking.
you. Take care.
उनमें कोई फर्क नहीं दिखना चाहिए।